My mother-in-law thought she owned my house, so I banned her and divorced her son. I'm Katy. I'm a 30-year-old office worker who somehow ended up in a situation worthy of a TV comedy. I'm a working woman, and that's who I am. Married to a man who's still tied to his mother's apron strings. That's my husband, Gary, and a mother-in-law who thinks she's the Queen of England. I know what you're thinking. Katy, honey, why did you marry a mama's boy? Well, let me tell you, love makes you blind, deaf, and apparently stupid. When I met Gary in college, he seemed like a dream come true. Tall, handsome, and capable of forming complete sentences, which is rare in the wild jungle of higher education. A few years later, here I am, living in a beautiful $2 million house with my husband and our daughter, a house that I inherited from my father. Sounds like a fairy tale, right? Well, buckle up, because here's where it gets interesting. You see, my dear husband and his loving mother seemed to be under the impression that this beautiful, spacious house and worth every penny of that $2 million was thanks to Gary's hard work and his mother's impeccable taste. But before I reveal the juicy details of how I got the last laugh in the scam of the century, let me take you on a journey through the hilarious, frustrating, and frankly absurd events that led me to the moment when I finally decided to drop the most epic truth bomb. I was a bright-eyed college student with way too many expectations when I met Gary. Armed with nothing but a dream, a pile of textbooks, and an unhealthy addiction to cafeteria coffee, Gary walked into my life like a knight in shining armor. If that armor were made of football jerseys and beer cans, our eyes met in a crowded lecture hall, and it was love at first sight. Okay, fine. It wasn't that romantic, actually. He spilled his energy drink all over my notes, and I may have said a few words that would make a sailor blush. But hey, nothing says true love like ruined notes and sticky fingers. From that moment on, we were inseparable. The first sign of Gary's particular relationship with his mother came on our third date. Picture the scene: candlelit dinner, soft music, the two of us gazing lovingly into each other's eyes. Suddenly, Gary's phone rings. He ignores it, like any normal person would on a date. Or not. Our Gary practically launched himself across the table to answer it. "Hi, Mom," he said with all the enthusiasm of a Labrador retriever seeing his owner after 5 minutes of separation. What followed was a 15-minute conversation about whether he remembered to pack his lucky underwear for exam week. I wish I was joking. I really do. I should have run for the hills like any self-respecting woman would, but I didn't. I sat there drinking my cheap, lukewarm wine, thinking, aw, he loves his mom. Past Katy. If I could go back in time and slap some sense into you, I would. And hard. Fast forward a few years, and suddenly we're engaged. How did that happen, you ask? Well, let's just say it involved a hidden ring, a proposal speech that mentioned his mother no less than 5 times, and me, in my infinite wisdom, saying yes. The wedding planning phase was an experience. And by experience, I mean a nightmare sprinkled with passive-aggressive comments from my future mother-in-law. This is where Carol really began to shine. Every decision, from the color of the napkins to the flavor of the cake, had to be approved by Carol. God forbid we chose lilac. The band's playlist, the bridesmaids' dresses, Carol nearly had an aneurysm over those. And Gary, he was as useful as a chocolate teapot. Every time I tried to ask for his opinion on something, he'd shrug and say, "Whatever you and Mom think is best, honey." I should have known then that I wasn't just marrying Gary. I was entering a polygamous relationship with him and his mother. But the real fun began when we started house hunting. Most couples look for houses together. Maybe they bring a real estate agent or a trusted friend for a second opinion. Not us. That would be too normal. We brought Carol. The icing on the cake was when we finally found a house that everyone approved of. And by everyone, I mean Carol gave her stamp of approval, and I was already too exhausted to keep arguing. While we were standing in the living room, Carol turned to Gary with tears in her eyes and said, "Oh, honey, I can see our family gathered here on Christmas morning." Our family. Not your family, our. I was standing right there, and somehow I'd already been erased from the picture. Gary corrected her? Of course not. He just nodded, probably picturing himself in bear pajamas, opening presents, while his adoring mommy watched him with shining eyes. By this point, you're surely wondering why I didn't run away. Believe me, I've asked myself that question approximately 37,042 times since then. But love, lack of sleep from all those house tours, and the sunk cost fallacy are a dangerous combination. So, against all better judgment and probably several laws of nature, we got married. The wedding was, well, let's just say if you look up the word circus in the dictionary, you'll find a picture of our nuptial procession. Carol wore white. Yes, you read that right. White at her son's wedding. When I pointed it out to Gary, he just shrugged and said, "Mom says it's more of an off-white, my foot." It was whiter than a polar bear in a snowstorm, but we made it through. We said I do, cut the cake, and embarked on our new life together. And by together, I mean with Carol's constant presence lurking in the background. Now, you'd think that once we were married and settled into our new house, the one Carol chose, remember, things would calm down. Nope, married life with Gary was like being in a 3-legged race. Except the third leg was Carol, and she was always trying to trip me up. She was everywhere. If she wasn't physically present, she was there in spirit, living rent-free in Gary's head and dictating every aspect aspect of our lives. Want to buy a new sofa? Better check with Carol first. Thinking of trying a new recipe for dinner? Oh no, Gary only likes food the way his mother makes it. Want to paint the guest room? Slow down, young lady. Maybe Carol won't like that color combination. And before I knew it, I was pregnant. Now most women enjoy their pregnancies. They have baby showers, decorate the nursery, and bask in the glow of impending motherhood. I got to enjoy Carol's constant commentary on everything I ate, drank, or did. Apparently, when you're carrying precious Gary Jr., you can no longer make decisions for yourself. Oh, Katy, you really shouldn't be drinking coffee. I never touched that stuff when I was pregnant with Gary. Well, maybe that explains how Gary turned out. Katy, dear, are you sure you want to paint the nursery that color? Studies show it could affect the baby's cognitive development. Again, Gary seems to have sampled that paint too, and Gary nodded along to everything his mother said. I swear, if Carol had told him that standing on his head and singing "I'm a Little Teapot" would ensure a healthy baby, he would have been upside down singing nursery rhymes before you could say umbilical cord. The day I went into labor was quite an experience. I was huffing and puffing, trying not to curse every man on the planet, and guess who walked into the delivery room? Carol. Gary had called her before he called the hospital. I'm not joking. His first instinct when his wife went into labor was to call his mommy. I'd say I was surprised, but by that point, I was too busy trying to give birth to Care. There I was, bringing a new life into the world, with my husband on one side looking like he was about to pass out at any moment, and my mother-in-law on the other offering pearls of wisdom like, "Now Katy, when I gave birth to Gary, I didn't make even half that much noise. Having a baby only gave Carol more ammunition. Now I wasn't just a bad wife, I was a bad mother. Every decision I made was wrong. I wasn't feeding the baby properly. I wasn't changing her correctly. I wasn't singing the right song. It was an endless avalanche of criticism, all delivered with that syrupy smile that made me fantasize about pushing her into a barrel of quick-dry cement. Gary was thrilled. He had his mommy and his daughter under the same roof. The fact that his wife was losing her mind seemed to escape him completely. It was around this time that I realized I needed to make a change. Not for my sake, or not just for my sake. I was already too far gone. But for my daughter. I refused to raise a girl who thought it was normal that her father consulted his mother for every decision. I refused to let her grow up believing her worth depended on how well she met her mother-in-law's impossible standards. So I did what any sensible woman would do. I changed jobs. Yes, you read that right. I quit my well-paying, stable job with irregular hours for a position that paid less, but gave me more time at home. Because I was determined to be there for my daughter in a way Gary never would be. Of course, Carol had plenty to say about that decision. Oh, Katy, are you sure that's a good idea? How are you going to maintain Gary's lifestyle on that salary? As if Gary's lifestyle of playing video games and consulting his mommy about which sock to put on required a six-figure income to maintain. But I stood firm. For the first time since I met Gary, I made a decision without considering what Carol might think. But don't worry, this isn't the end of the story. Oh no, we're just getting started. Remember that $2 million house I mentioned? That's where things really start to get interesting. But more on that later. For now, I need a good strong drink and possibly a lobotomy to forget the image of Carol in her off-white wedding dress. Update 1. The living situation last time. I left you with the birth of my daughter and my brilliant decision to change jobs. Now let's fast forward a bit to when things really started to heat up. There we were, a happy family of 3, or 4 if you count Carol, which apparently Gary always did. Our daughter was growing faster than Gary's mountain of dirty laundry, and we started to feel a little cramped in our current place. You know, the house that Carol had so generously chosen for us newlyweds. One fine day, over a breakfast of burnt toast, my dear husband said something that almost made me choke on my charcoal-flavored crust. Honey, he said with all the subtlety of a bull in a china shop, I've been thinking, Mom is getting older and I'm worried about her future. What if we look for a place where we can all live together? Now, I pride myself on being a reasonable person. I've endured Carol's constant meddling, Gary's inability to make decisions without consulting the mothership. But this was too much. I tried to reason with him. I pointed out that Carol had more years ahead of her than a fine wine full of preservatives and would probably outlive us all. I reminded him that we valued our privacy, but no, Gary was determined. He had a whole speech prepared about family values and taking care of our elders. I'm pretty sure Carol had written it for him and made him practice it in front of a mirror. I was faced with a choice. Accept living with the woman who had made it her mission in life to criticize every aspect of my existence, or be the evil daughter-in-law who denied sweet Carol the joy of watching her granddaughter grow up. But your girl Katy doesn't give up without a fight. Oh no, I put on my big girl pants and proposed a compromise. We would look for a house, sure, but it would be near Carol's current home, not in it. Close enough for frequent visits, but far enough that I could pretend the doorbell was broken when I needed a break from sanity. Surprisingly, Gary agreed. I suspect he was just relieved that I hadn't immediately filed for divorce or committed him to a psychiatric hospital for even suggesting we live with his mother. Now, remember how I mentioned earlier that I inherited a house from my father? Well, here's where things get interesting. You see, I hadn't told Gary about this little inheritance. Why, you ask? Partly because I knew the moment Carol found out, she'd be redecorating the place in her mind. But mostly because, well, I guess I wanted something that was just mine. So I suggested we look for houses in the area where my inherited property happened to be located. Gary was none the wiser. He was too busy making sure every property we viewed had a suitable room for his mother's extended stay days. Eventually, we settled on a house. And when I say we settled, I mean I managed to convince Gary and Carol that the house I'd inherited was on the market and was perfect for us because, of course, having a bigger house didn't deter Carol. It just gave her more space to spread her special brand of crazy. She started visiting all the time. At first, it was just once a week, then twice, then every other day. Soon, I was finding excuses to work late just to avoid coming home and finding her reorganizing my cupboards or giving me lectures on the proper way to fold fitted sheets. Gary was thrilled. He had his mommy nearby, coddling him, cooking his favorite meals, and generally treating him like he was still a 12-year-old who needed his mom to cut the crusts off his sandwiches. About 3 months after we moved in, I came home one day to find that Carol had let herself in and was in the middle of repainting our living room. "Oh, Katy, you're home," she said cheerfully, as if walking into someone's house and redecorating was completely normal. "I hope you don't mind, but that almond color was so boring. I thought a nice mauve would give it more life." "Mommy? Mommy, look what Grandma got me!" And there, in my daughter's arms, was the ugliest, frilliest dress I had ever seen. My daughter loved it. Looking at my mauve walls, my beaming daughter, and Carol's satisfied face, I realized something had to change. And since it's legally frowned upon to throw your mother-in-law out a window, I knew the one who had to change was me. It all started with a phone call from my mom. Now, let me take a moment to appreciate my mother. Compared to Carol, she's a saint. She calls me once a week. She remembers my birthday without Facebook reminding her. And she has never once implied that her way of loading the dishwasher is superior to mine. But this call was different. My parents' health had been declining for a while, and things had taken a turn for the worse. They were struggling to take care of themselves. They really needed help. I did what any good daughter would do. I adjusted my work schedule, kissed my daughter goodbye, and prepared to split my time between my house and my parents' place. Gary's response was exactly what you'd expect. He mumbled something about how hard it would be for him to manage without me, as if he was the one balancing a job, a daughter, and 2 sick parents. He even had the audacity to suggest that maybe Carol could come stay with us full-time to help, but I didn't have time for a colicky husband. I had parents to care for, a daughter to raise, and a job to keep. So I did what women have done since the beginning of time. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and carried on. What I didn't expect was Carol's reaction to my new schedule. You'd think she'd be thrilled. After all, I was out of the house more often, which gave her free rein to redecorate to her heart's content and dote on her precious boy. But no. To her, the fact that I was prioritizing my own parents meant that I was somehow neglecting my duties as a wife and mother. I wasn't spending enough time with my daughter. The house was messy. Gary was eating too much takeout. It all came to a head one night when I arrived late from my parents' house, exhausted and emotionally drained, and found Carol in my kitchen, her lips pursed in disapproval. "Katy," she said in that syrupy voice that made me want to commit felonies, "I think we need to talk about your priorities. And there, dear Reddit, I'll leave you for now." Because what happened next? Well, that's a story for another time. Update 2. The confrontation. I was in my kitchen, so tired I could barely see straight. I'd spent the day juggling work calls, changing my dad's IV, and trying to convince my mom that she needed to eat something more than stale cookies and sadness. And now here was Carol, staring at me and accusing me. What came out of my mouth was a wave of frustration, rage, and enough swear words to invent new curses. It was like a dam had broken, and years of suppressed resentment came flooding out. Carol didn't take it well. Her face went through more colors than a chameleon in a bag of Skittles. Then Gary walked in. He was ready to defend my honor and put his mother in her place. Yeah, right. Gary took one look at the scene, his wife red with fury and possibly foaming at the mouth, and his precious mommy looking like she was about to faint on the nearest sofa. And guess what he did? He took her side. In the great showdown between his wife and his mother, Gary chose his mommy. He started launching into a speech about respect, family values, and how I was tearing this family apart with my selfish behavior. But Gary wasn't done. Oh no. He saved the best for last. In a move that I'm sure he thought was his winning card, he dropped this gem. "If you ever wanted a divorce, you and our daughter wouldn't be able to make it on your own. You understand?" "Oh, my sweet Gary, you just made a monumental mistake." I started laughing. Gary and Carol stared at me like I'd finally lost my mind. And maybe I had. But in losing it, I also found something. My spine. Once I could breathe again, I straightened up. "Honey," I said, "who said I'd be the one who couldn't make it?" The confusion on their faces was priceless. You could practically see the hamster wheels turning in their heads, trying to process what I'd just said. And that's when I dropped the biggest truth bomb. I told them everything about the house. About how it wasn't just any house, it was a $2 million property I'd inherited from my father. About how every mortgage payment, every tax bill, and every leaky faucet repair had been paid for with my money. Gary's face went from confusion to disbelief, and then to something that looked suspiciously like fear. Carol, on the other hand, went through shock, indignation, and then settled into a type of calculating interest that gave me chills. But I wasn't done. I was on a roll, and nothing short of an act of God was going going to shut me up. I explained everything. How I'd been biting my tongue for years, enduring Carol's interference and Gary's spinelessness. How I'd changed jobs, sacrificed my career, and bent over backward to accommodate all their whims. And for what? To be treated like a glorified maid in my own house? I made it very clear that things were going to change. No more surprise visits from Carol. No more redecorating without my permission. No more treating me like I was a charity case who should be grateful for the crumbs of affection they decided to throw my way. And to Gary, I made it clear that he had a choice to make. He could start acting like a husband and father, or he could pack his bags and go live with his adoring mommy. Because I was done. Done. Carol predictably burst into crocodile tears, wailing that she'd only ever wanted what was best for the family, that she couldn't believe I'd deceived them. And how could I be so cruel to poor sweet Gary? Gary, for his part, looked like he'd been hit by a truck. He stammered, stuttered, and even tried to argue that surely, as my husband, he had some claim to the house. I did what any sensible woman would do in my situation. I called a lawyer, the kind of lawyer that makes other lawyers wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. Because if Gary thought he was going to intimidate me with divorce threat, he was in for a surprise. My lawyer assured me that not only was the house completely mine, but if Gary wanted to push for a divorce, he'd be lucky to walk away with more than the clothes on his back. Of course, this is real life and not a movie, so things didn't magically resolve overnight. Gary, in a surprising display of survival instinct, seemed to realize he'd messed up royally. He started talking about couples therapy, about fixing things, about how he loved me and our daughter. Carol, on the other hand, well, let's just say she didn't take her new status as persona non grata very well. She tried everything: emotional blackmail, love bombing, even a half-hearted attempt at an apology. But I held firm: my house, my rules. And my rules said no more Carol. I realized that by standing up for myself, by refusing to be a doormat one more time, I was teaching my daughter the most valuable lesson of all: that she deserves respect, that she doesn't have to tolerate anyone's abuse. Not even families. Especially not families. Now I know you're dying to know what happened next. Well, my dear curious readers, that's a story for another day. For now, let's just say life is interesting. Challenging, yes, but also liberating in a way I never thought possible. I'm rediscovering who I am without Gary's expectations and Carol's constant criticisms weighing me down. So if you're out there dealing with your own Gary or Carol, remember this: you're worth more than you think. You deserve more than you think. And sometimes the most liberating thing you can do is stand up and say, no more. Update 3, the divorce. I'm back because I know how much you've been waiting for the conclusion of this story and my wonderful marriage. If you catch my sarcasm, I bet you wanted to know if Gary stayed with me or with his adoring mommy. Well, let me tell you, he never really had a choice. Though if I'm being honest, if he did have a choice, he probably would have chosen his mother. Luckily, shortly after my last update, the divorce papers were ready to be served. Gary's face when he received those papers was as funny as you can imagine. A mix of surprise, worry, and confusion. Like he couldn't believe what was happening. He acted as if divorce was the strangest thing in the world, like he hadn't seen it coming. But honestly, the really strange thing is that I hadn't filed for divorce much sooner. What's even stranger is that I married him in the first place, or that I didn't run away the first time he showed clear signs of being a mama's boy. Along with the divorce papers came, as expected, an eviction notice. I wasn't going to let him continue living in my house one day longer than necessary. The good news for him was that he didn't have to move far. His new and old address was exactly where we all expected, his mother's house. Of course, I made that comment thinking it would be good news for him. I mean, what could be better than living with his adoring mother? Curiously, he didn't find it funny. Why? No idea. I thought he'd enjoy it with all his emotional incest. Well, it's only emotional, right? Fortunately, he didn't take long to leave. It only took him a few days to pack and move out, probably because he already had some clothes at his mother's house. The reason? I don't want to know, nor do I care. Once he left, everything proceeded as it should. The divorce process took a few months, as these things usually do, but it was finally completed. I kept the house because it was never a marital asset. It was an inheritance from my father. And for those asking, yes, it's possible to inherit something if the person is still alive. As for the rest of our belongings, we divided them fairly. But the best part of all, Gary now has to pay child support. This was a huge relief because I was starting to consider looking for a better paying job to support my daughter and myself now that he's out of the picture. But thanks to the child support, we can cover the difference without too much worry. Plus, now that his mother can no longer enter this house or interfere in our lives, there's significant saving. It's amazing what you can achieve when you get rid of an emotional parasite. As expected, Carol tried to come back. She wanted to see her granddaughter, but I was very clear. If she wants to see her, she can do so during the time she spends with her father. I made it clear that there's no room for her in this house. And yes, maybe I was a little harsh, but I told her that dangerous animals aren't allowed here. The expression on her face when I said that was almost as good as Gary's when he received the divorce papers. As for custody of our daughter, we reached an agreement. She spends the week with me and weekends with her father, though realistically, that time is mostly spent with her grandmother, since Gary still lives with Carol and hasn't made any effort to move out, even though several months have passed since he left my house. For the rest, I have to say things are much better now. Once you get rid of what's poisoning your life, everything starts to improve. It's like I'd been carrying a backpack full of rocks for years, and when I finally put it down, everything suddenly became easier. I no longer have to walk on eggshells in my own home or live under the constant shadow of Carol's criticism. My daughter is calmer, and although it may be difficult for her to have divorced parents, I think she also feels the difference without her grandmother's constant interference in our space. Now the house finally feels like my home. And in case you're wondering, yes, I finally got rid of every trace of mauve in the house. That paint was the first thing to go once Gary left. Freedom has a color, and I can assure you it's not mauve. What would you have done if you were in Katy's shoes? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.